Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard brought to you by our sponsor, The Great Game of Business. I'm Loren Feldman, and I'm here with Shawn Busse to talk about things we think business owners should be following this week. As you know from our weekly conversations, Shawn is CEO and founder of Kinesis, which is based in Portland, Oregon, and works with small businesses on marketing, culture, and strategy. Welcome to Dashboard, Shawn.
Morning, Loren. Good to be here.
Great to have you here. Shawn, you wrote a really interesting LinkedIn post recently in which you expressed some skepticism about big data. You wrote that this skepticism first arose back in your previous life as a college professor. Tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's kind of funny how the post came about. I was on an Instagram page that was the post for the national parks. And there was a picture of somebody who had given the national parks a 1-star review because the mountains weren't good enough. If you're not following national parks, they seem to have a pretty good sense of humor on Instagram. So there were some others that were just, really priceless. Like, showed up at the park, but the clouds blocked the view. So I was really disappointed. 2 stars. Anyway, it reminded me of back when I was teaching at the college level and how they started using more and more surveys to determine if professors were, good, effective, or making the students happy. And, what drove me nuts about those was that, kind of everybody's vote counted equally. Even if a student, only attended half the classes, they still got to, give you a 1-star review. And that kind of got me to thinking about businesses and how often businesses use surveys and try to understand things through, surveying people.
Just stop for 1 second. This is slightly off point, but what were you teaching?
Yeah, I was teaching fine arts. I was teaching sculpture, ceramics, painting, drawing, design.
Interesting. And how did you make the leap from that to founding a business?
Well,
the quick version. Sorry.
So the quick version was I realized that academia is kind of a pyramid scheme, both on the student side as well as the teaching side. So in order to get into teaching, it doesn't matter whether you're a great teacher or not. You have to have a good body of work. And then you have to do really kind of drudgery teaching assignments for many, many years until you can get tenure. And then once you have tenure, you're kind of bulletproof and you get to be in the job forever, even if you're a terrible teacher. So I just eventually decided I wasn't willing to kind of put up with awful jobs for, 10 or 15 years before I had any kind of job security.
Were you getting poor reviews from your students, Shawn?
Well, that was the real reason I quit. No, no, actually, I got very binary reviews. I either got 5 stars or 1 stars. So
interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like businesses, right? You go online when you're either really happy with something or you're really upset. And I got 1-star reviews from the students who were lazy and didn't want to work very hard, and then I got 5-star reviews from the students put in the work.
How did you know that? Aren't the reviews supposed to be anonymous?
Yeah, you could figure it out. It wasn't that hard,
Okay.
You're grading papers, so you're seeing people's writing style. You see, their ability or inability.
I get it.
You get it. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, all that to say, I think it's just really important when you're looking for feedback to make sure you're asking the right people for the feedback.
Which is kind of a religion. I mean, a lot of businesses do this, net promoter score and all that stuff. And you're kind of raising an interesting question about whether that data is as valuable as people would like it to be.
Totally. This came up at Kinesis a couple months ago. We had our Catalyst event, which was a summit for owner-operated businesses. And it's a 2-day event. So the first day is a Thursday evening, and that's really kind of a social event where everybody gets to meet each other and, have good food and talk and connect. And then the Friday after is a full day. And the year prior, what we discovered is that people who didn't attend Thursday universally gave us lower marks in terms of feedback. And what we realized was happening they also complained that there wasn't enough time to network, which is ironic because that's what Thursday was for. So what we realized is that you really needed to come to Thursday in order to have the value of the event. And so when we marketed it this year, we said very specifically, if you're going to come to the event, make sure you attend Thursday because you'll have a great chance to connect to people. So as is human nature, some people didn't attend the Thursday event. And my team really wanted to survey attendees. And I was like, let's not do it. This is a waste of time. If we're going to ask them for something, let's ask them for something different. But, I just said, all right, this is what you want to do. Let's do it. And universally, the people who gave us low marks didn't attend the Thursday part of the event. And you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
So you could, if you weren't very insightful about this, you would pay attention to those folks and their poor experience. But why did they have a poor experience? They didn't actually have the whole experience. So there's something to be learned there from like, okay, how do we make sure people attend? Maybe we need to be really aggressive about it and like call them up and say, if you're not going to come Thursday, don't come at all. But it's kind of squeaky wheel gets the oil kind of situation.
Or give away a big prize Thursday night.
Yes. Dinner with Loren Feldman. I think there next year. That's the prize. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just really important to ask the right people when you're looking for information. And it doesn't mean that you ignore unhappy customers or people who've had a bad experience. I mean, you can learn a lot from that too. But like when we work with clients, the first thing we do is we talk to customers that they have that are their best customers, meaning they want more of those customers.
That sounds kind of counterintuitive. In the sense that you're talking to people who, by definition, are likely to be happy and by definition are less likely to tell you if there's a problem you need to know about. Why is that not the case?
Well, okay. So first is saying that's a valid thing. Talking to unhappy customers or customers who may give you negative feedback. And we get that from those customers. And when I say best customers, I want to preface it and say those who are going to be the most truthful with you, authentic. But then on the other side of it is spend more with you, are repeat customers, have higher lifetime value. And the reason I want to listen to them most is because I want to go get more of them. Like I want more of the clients who are more profitable, better for your bottom line, better for your emotional well-being, more fun to work with. And I think when you survey an entire cohort of customers, you can sometimes miss the things that are really important to the winners. It's a lot like in management, how often managers will try to coach the most failing employees in your organization, and then they'll ignore the top performers until they quit. Right. It's that same idea. It's like, don't ignore the top performers just because they're the top performers. Actually, you probably should put more energy into the top performers. And those that are really at the bottom and you're having to work really, really hard to coach them up, you might actually be better off getting rid of them. So I think customers are the same way.
In your LinkedIn post, you wrote that if you actually do take the time to talk to your best customers, it'll change everything. Could you give us an example of that? The kind of thing you could, maybe a client or you yourself at your firm Kinesis have learned through this process?
Yeah. So I think the other piece I would put in there is have somebody else do it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So this gets to the will they tell you the truth? I think it's easier for a customer to tell somebody else about your business than you. There's just a human nature of in relationships where you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. You want to be kind and compassionate. And I think your authenticity goes up when you're talking to somebody who's a step removed from the owner or the business itself. So that would be the first piece.
They're probably also likely to do a better job asking the questions as opposed to getting defensive and,
right.
and trying to argue the customer out of a negative opinion.
Or ask leading questions.
Right.
So that's the other problem of asking questions to your customers is you'll tend to ask a leading question as opposed to more open-ended questions that discover new things, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to discover new things with people who want you to succeed. So yeah, hire somebody or recruit somebody to do the job outside of your business. It would be lesson number one. And then, and I would say, even though we do this for clients, like, day in, day out, we've done it for many, many years and we're very, very good at it. When we went to our customers, we hired somebody to do it for us. Like we definitely believe in it that much.
Interesting.
To pay for it. Yeah. Yeah. And then I think you asked what's something I learned. So from that process for us, something that I learned that I can share, because the stuff we do for clients is mostly confidential. I could probably generalize some, but I can speak for Kinesis. And the thing we learned for us is how often clients got something that they weren't expecting. So, they were thinking, oh, I'm hiring you to do marketing and build a website. And then they would learn that one of the first things we do is try to figure out, is the culture really thriving? And if it is, how can we amplify it even more? So that came as a surprise to them. And so it's changed our sales process to where we're more deliberate about talking about that in the sales process. So it wasn't a bad surprise, but it's still like you want to be clear with customers what they're getting so they aren't pushing back on you.
All right, next topic. You were just on a panel talking about the current economy. Tell us about that. What was the purpose of this?
Yeah, so it's a pretty cool organization here in Portland called Xenium. They're a outsourced HR and PEO, and they do an economic and leadership forum once a year. And this is their 12th year. So, they've got a track record, and they brought 3 businesses to the stage, all in different industries. So you got Shawn here with professional services, consulting, marketing, brand, culture work. You had another guy. He was a farmer. He grows hops for the beer industry. And then you had a kind of steel fabricator. So Alicia builds, bridges and, infrastructure, So just all 3 of us were sharing our thoughts, to the audience. And then before we shared our thoughts, they had an economist give kind of the overview of the macroeconomic picture. And it was very much like your morning report. It was like, yeah, everybody's been talking recession and negative, but all the data says it's pretty good,
We just had a blowout 4.9% annualized GDP growth quarter, which I think took everyone by surprise.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm curious about, and I had just had lunch with a friend, and he's like, do you think GDP is the right measurement? Like maybe it should be something different, So I'm wondering about that too, because all 3 businesses on stage, we were all struggling in some way or the other. Like we were like hops guy, man, the beer industry has just taken it in the shorts. Even the fabricator, who's working in, infrastructure, I thought she would be on fire. And she's like, no, all this government chaos is killing me. Like it's just creating inaction. I can't, because a lot of her contracts are through, by extension, the federal government.
It's really interesting because, we've had this extended period where everybody keeps waiting for the other shoe or the recession to drop, and it doesn't come. And in fact, the economy seems to get stronger. And yet, I don't think you guys are alone. I talk to a lot of business owners who say they're struggling, and I'm curious about that. It's there are always going to be businesses struggling even in good times.
Sure.
That's always been the case. It will always be the case. It has to be the case. But this feels different somehow. Does it feel different to you too?
It really does. The word I've put out there is defense, meaning I think so many owners right now are still just kind of playing defense. And I think a lot of that comes from the pandemic and sort of the psychological challenge of it.
We have been through a lot.
We've been through a lot, and I think it's easy to underestimate the guy I had lunch with. He sold his business a year ago for a ton of money. And, the look on his face, he was tired. You could tell he was just tired.
Today or when you sold it?
He was tired when he sold it. Today he feels more invigorated.
I bet.
but even that, he's like, yeah, it was really hard, and I feel better that I have taken so much money off the table. But he was just talking about just the ripple effects that the pandemic had on him, even though he's very successful. So I think you've got that. You got the psychological component, and then I don't know, how to put this, but the government putting a lot of money in the pockets of a lot of people, I think it made it easy to kind of like cruise and not really do something, whether that's...
You're talking about the COVID-related funds.
Yeah, the COVID funds, PPP, EIDL, ERC, all these acronyms that translate into hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars for businesses. I've just seen that. I've just seen a lot of defense. Like,
that's interesting.
I don't know,
Well, it probably also kept some businesses alive that might have struggled even absent COVID. Now that times are good, they have to get back to operating in a normal market, and they're struggling now the way they would have previously if they hadn't gotten that money.
I think that's a great point. I think there are a lot of zombie companies out there. I think the commercial real estate market is full of zombie companies, meaning these, like I was looking the other day, there are buildings in Portland. They did it like a summary of vacancy rates. And we're talking big buildings, Loren. We're talking 100,000 square feet and up. And you would see a building 150,000 square feet, occupancy or maybe vacancy rate. How about that? 150,000, vacancy rate 130,000, meaning 20,000 square feet was all that was being used. And, and they were like building after building after building like this. It was crazy.
But there's not much mystery about that. We know what's causing that problem.
We do, but we haven't felt it, right? Like we haven't. Those buildings haven't largely been taken over by the banks yet. So I think we're at the tip of that iceberg. So if you think about the financial ramifications there, the data may not show that, but the how that impacts things, like think about all the cleaning companies and, office furniture companies, on and on and on and on. So zombies, I think there's a lot of zombies.
There are always ripple effects like that. I mean, just the higher interest rate is having a big impact on housing, and that has a big impact on all kinds of businesses that are dependent on people moving into new homes, which isn't happening right now. But then you come back to that 4.9% GDP growth. It's hard for me to get my head around that.
I know. I kind of wonder too if this isn't like a white collar recession or like it's like certain sectors are just totally taking off, but others aren't. That's something that I'm so mistrustful of single data points that, and I'm not saying we're in a recession. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that I just know a lot of businesses that they're not dying, but they're not thriving either. And I'm trying to figure out what that is. And I think it's the PTSD from a recession. I think it's the PTSD from the Great Resignation. And then I think it's, if you had some resources, it allowed you to not be very, you didn't have to be ambitious. You could just sort of cruise. So, yeah, I don't know. I could go on and on about this. And the baby boomers retiring, I think that's a huge factor, but anyway.
I'm sure we'll come back to this. One last topic for today. I almost hate to do this, but I recently highlighted a story in the Morning Report about Mark Andreessen, who has long been one of the most prominent venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. Andreessen wrote a manifesto recently covering a lot of ground, way too much for us to discuss here. But among other things, it argues that the last thing we need are guardrails on the development of technology, especially artificial intelligence. You're out there on the West Coast. There's a lot of tech companies in Oregon, not quite Silicon Valley, but have you given this any thought?
Yeah, I just wonder if Mark Andreessen has a teenage daughter, come on, there are just so many examples of where technology left unfettered has been very harmful to the Commonwealth, the data is showing us now, like
it's like a cliche. We all know this, and yet he's there saying that if we put guardrails on artificial intelligence, people are going to lose their lives.
Well, first, let's talk about the narcissism that somebody has to have in order to kind of write that sentence. Okay.
Or the self-interest.
The self-interest. It's just, I don't know. I feel like that folks that aren't in tech are starting to become exhausted with tech and sort of like the tech will save the world kind of thing. I mean, I was a believer in the early days of the internet. I was like, wow, the transparency that's going to be created by this and the access of, for businesses to reach other businesses. I was super excited. And I was super excited at Twitter in the early days too. Like I was like, wow, look at what's happening in terms of movements. Remember the Arab Spring, like all these ideas. And then, oh yeah, also, China can use technology to surveil its people and like lock them up for life. And like, so it's like this idea that it's this like universally benevolent force is just, I don't know, seems kind of stupid. Like I don't know.
If you actually read his manifesto, it includes an actual enemies list. And if you disagree even slightly with his prescription for everything, you're an enemy, which I found really discouraging. I mean, I don't pretend to know anything about AI. I barely know how to use ChatGPT, let alone how it should be regulated. I'm not going to offer my opinion on that. But I would argue we need more open debate, not less. And it's just amazing to me that in this center of entrepreneurship, this kind of thinking has taken hold. Has it always been that way and I just didn't know it?
I think there's been a sea change. I mean, I used to have tremendous admiration for Elon Musk and what he's done with engineering and hardware and design. And then, he's kind of gone off the deep end too. And I don't know if it's a combination of like late middle age irrelevancy, male ego, and like money. Like that Venn diagram is pretty wicked. But I just like, okay, look, whenever somebody offers an opinion, I try to understand what are their incentives. And Marc Andreessen is nothing if not a successful person who's deployed money to make more money. And he's deployed that money in the realm of technology and been very successful at it. Props to him. At the same time, lots of folks are starting to question that domain, and I think he just doesn't want to be questioned. And I think he wants to make more money. I mean, wasn't he part of the whole NFT kind of nonsense of like the world's going to change with digital money, right? Am I right about that?
Big supporter of crypto.
Crypto guy. Yeah, right. And I mean, how many people lost their shorts on that nonsense? I mean, crypto is basically a good way for criminals to get money to places that it shouldn't be. That's crypto's value. And I'm
value
sure
proposition, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there are listeners that are going to be like, no, self-executing contracts. And that's probably fair, but like crypto largely is just great for criminal enterprises.
So you and I are wringing our hands about this. Does it matter? Is there a reason to care?
I don't think so. I mean, I think what matters is like parents are starting to say, should our children have cell phones at the age of 12, right? And if they do have cell phones, can we make them so that kids only can do certain things like call their parents in an emergency or text their friends, but not have access to maybe social media, because it is harmful to them. And so let's actually be parents. Like, let's actually care about our children and do the job we're supposed to do. And I think that in large ways, Andreessen is sort of suggesting, yeah, let's go Lord of the Flies on all this stuff. Let the kids range, I'm so cynical on this. Because the track record just is not good, man.
Obviously, I kind of agree with you. I just find it discouraging that this is what Silicon Valley has come to. And that's the pinnacle of entrepreneurship in the minds of many people in this country.
I want to hope that a lot of people believed in kind of those guys, just for the same reason I sort of used to think Elon Musk was great, is that they did do some really great things.
Clearly.
Like, full stop, and amazing things. And I also think part of being an adult is like evaluating things and making decisions with complex inputs. And those complex inputs can be health of the Commonwealth, care for others, concern for children, functioning governments, and I think a lot of these guys love the fact that they have a little private mansion on New Zealand with a bunker because, if the American government all falls apart, their exit plan is to just go to New Zealand. They don't care.
All right.
I don't know. We're ending on such a cynical note here. I mean, there are some awesome technologists. I know some fantastic people using technology to solve for things like climate change, to help make the workplace more equitable, to provide access to education. So I think we need to kind of keep that in our sights. Technology took us to the moon. Technology helped us, communicate more easily. It's a lot of great things. It's just, there are people out there that should just shut the fuck up. Sorry. Sorry.
Well, that's probably not going to happen, but it's Monday morning and we need to get back to the real world.
All right, you can bleep
me. Shawn Busse is CEO of Kinesis, which is based in Portland, Oregon, and works with small businesses on marketing, culture, and strategy. This episode was brought to you by The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to help build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. I hope I haven't depressed you too much, Shawn. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Loren. That was fun.
Have a great week, everybody.